I will call this May 9th meeting, regular meeting of the Board of County Commissioners to order. Thank you for being here this morning, everyone. The clamoring is driving me crazy.
Could you take that outside, sir?
Mr. Rickoff, could you clear the room so we can conduct business?
I'll see to that at once.
Any adjustments to the agenda this morning? I see none. Any public comments this morning? I see none. Then Commissioner's response to public comments and or other issues and remonstrance. Commissioner Sorensen.
Mr. Chair, I just wanted to commend to the commissioners and others listening the May issue of Governing Magazine. The headline on it is "Why Can't Cities Build Enough Affordable Housing?" And there's an interesting article in here on Syracuse County, and what that has to do with us is that in Syracuse, New York, which is a city around Onondaga County, they commissioned a 19-member commission on local government modernization and concluded that efficiency within the county would be by eliminating, I don't know if it's all of the cities in the county, but the major city in the county, and then Syracuse would have no mayor, no police force, and no economic development agency. Its city council would be merged into a 33-member county legislature. This is the Blue Ribbon Commission kind of thing that's been made up of leaders in the community, and it was fun. The study or the effort of the Commission on Local Government Modernization was funded in part by the New York State Legislature, and it was created by a coalition of civic leaders. Anyway, this is something that we're going to have to keep looking at over time, because what happened in Portland is the city of Portland and the cities of Multnomah County, Clackamas County, and Washington County, they couldn't really agree on any consolidation, which was unfortunate, I think, because what they did agree on is creating another government on top of all that. And I think the direction, even though I don't know a whole lot about Syracuse or New York or Onondaga County, but the idea of reducing the number of governments seems to me to be a better option than creating another level of government called Metro. And in Oregon, in my view, we've gone just the opposite of we've created more governments, more special districts, Metro being the largest in terms of money example of it, but fire districts as well, and where we could just come back to some basics, like maybe cities and counties or just counties. So just an idea. And then the article on housing goes into why there's a housing crisis, particularly at the moderate income level.
Thank you, Commissioner Sorensen. I'd like to get a copy of that article, or I think I have the magazine sitting on my desk. Thank you. Further remonstrances? I see none. Just a couple of things I'll say. And in response to that, Commissioner Sorensen, here in Eugene back in 1995, Mayor Ruth Bascom convened a committee. It was called the Council Committee to Finance Affordable Housing, the CISIFA, as we called it. And it was Barbara Keller and Sean Bowles and Pat Farr and Nancy Nathanson. And we worked for, it was a blue ribbon commission. We each city councilor appointed 2 members to the committee, the larger committee, and we came up with what was a great plan. What we ultimately was put on the ballot was a 1% utility fee. That was a $1, a buck if your utilities were $100. We asked for 1%, and if that had passed back then, it would have generated about $1 million a year that would have gone directly into financing affordable housing. Would have done a lot of gap funding, would have done a lot of initial land acquisition, but the people of Eugene, and it was just Eugene, in our wisdom, turned it down. And I often think back, Mr. Rickoff, on if we'd passed that back then, $1 million a year since then, which would have compounded, of course, and it would still only be $1 out of $100. You know, if you spend $100 on utility fee, then the price of a can of soda, if you buy it in the right place, was how much each household would put in. This would be a very different place as far as affordable housing is concerned. But we are where we are today, and we have to do what we can from this moment forward with the tools that we have in place to find gap financing, to find places to build, and to help the city of Eugene, as we'll have an opportunity to do next week, move forward with Envision Eugene, which will help with the affordability of housing inside of our urban growth boundaries and even beyond. So I'm pretty excited about partnerships that we can form and working together with nonprofits, with other governments, and with private industry, or private agencies to make affordable housing happen. You know, we have a big plan. One of the plans of the Poverty and Homelessness Board, Commissioner Sorensen, is to provide 600 new units between now and 2021 for supportive housing. It's a lofty goal, particularly in today's climate regarding tax credits. And it's an uncertain climate. But we're committed to doing it, so we'll move forward with that. So thank you. The other thing I wanted to mention is something that happened to me yesterday. Several of us were at Association of Oregon Counties, and I stepped in on a meeting that Commissioner Lycan was in, and there was a room full of, I don't know, 35 or 40 or 50 people on that committee, and I stayed for just a moment to say hello. Then I went to a couple of committees that I was on, which I'll talk about. Then I went to Commissioner Bozovich's committee, which was on public safety, and there was standing room only in there, just jammed. You could hardly even breathe for a great presentation that was received, and Commissioner Bozovich is the co-chair of that committee. Then my committees, one committee had 3 people, and the other had 5 people. I thought, man, am I on the wrong committees? But my committees are for veterans issues, and the other one is Health and Human Services, which kind of is interesting that the Economics Committee and the Public Safety Committee was standing room only, but veterans and Housing and Human Services and the Housing Committee that I went to last Friday had 5 people. Just doesn't seem to attract the attention from the counties. I guess we need to find ways to make it as appealing and interesting. But I tell you, I left Commissioner Bozovich's meeting yesterday, Mr. Rickoff, and I didn't want to leave. I mean, it was riveting. So that being said, thanks for your work, and tell me how you do it. Tell me how you get these big committees to form. So any further remonstrances? I see none. Moving along then with emergency business, Mr. Rickoff.
Chair Farr, there's no emergency business today.
No emergency business, then we do have before us a consent calendar. All items listed on the consent calendar are considered to be routine by the Board of Commissioners and will be enacted by one motion in the form listed on today's agenda. There'll be no separate discussion of these items. If discussion is desired, any item will be or has been removed from the consent calendar and considered separately. We have the consent calendar. Do I have a motion? Commissioner Bozovich.
I'll move approval of the May 9th, 2017 consent calendar.
Second.
Moved by Commissioner Bozovich, seconded by Commissioner Lycan. Discussion to the motion. I see none. Then I'll call for the vote. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Passes unanimously. Thank you. Then moving along, I've been excited to hear from Mr. Russell this morning at Public Works. We have before us Order 170509-04 in the matter of adopting the recommended 5-year Parks and Open Space System Development Charge Capital Improvement Plan for fiscal year 17-18. Mr. Russell, I always love it when you're here because you're talking about parks and open space, something that everybody loves. So, Mr. Rickoff, or animals, which also everybody loves.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mike Russell, Lane County Parks and Animal Services Division Manager. Let me get my presentation going here. This morning we're going to talk about the next 5-year capital improvement program that includes allocations for the parks system development charge fees. As you know, Parks develops the 5-year plan every year, goes through a review process with the Parks Advisory Committee, the Finance and Audit Committee, and then ultimately your review and approval and adoption of the plan. Parks has been identifying other funding sources for reinvestment in infrastructure not eligible for SDCs, so not all improvements are eligible. They have to be capacity increasing improvements to be eligible for SDC, Parks SDC investment. So other funding sources include tax foreclosed property sales, state park grants, foundation grants, and new revenue options for services. Most of the projects in the CIP that you have before you today envision leveraging county funding resources with grant funds, donations, volunteer resources, and other partnership opportunities. Really trying to leverage our volunteer and partnership opportunities, putting actual dollars to the hours that our volunteers are putting into our parks that help offset some of those costs. In anticipation of the need to have a substantial match for phase 2 of Armitage Park Campground, staff is recommending, and Parks Advisory Committee also is recommending, to continue to let the SDC fund accrue. We haven't spent very much out of that fund since phase 1 of Armitage Park, which pretty much depleted it. So what I have on and in your packet is the red line version that was presented to the Parks Advisory Committee. Just to illustrate quickly, you'll see a lot of red arrows on the red line version. So if you remember last year, the 3rd year of the CIP had a lot of projects in it, had over $3 million worth of projects in it. We recognized at that time that that was not necessarily realistic. So we knew that this year we would be allocating the projects throughout the 5 years. And so that's what you're seeing here is we're just kind of shifting projects around based on priority and kind of evening out the program over the 5 years so that there's not a huge ball up on the 3rd year. So that's what you're seeing here. You'll see Perkins Peninsula boat ramp under the category of boat ramps has been crossed off. That's one of the projects that kind of fell off the program list. It's on the projects for development list, so it's still a priority. We still have it identified, but it's just not programmed in the next 5 years. It's one of the projects that fell off the list because of the reprogramming. Yeah, and there you'll see it there in the projects for future development in red, Perkins Peninsula Park boat ramp expansion. There are no new projects being proposed in this year's CIP. We just, like I say, reallocated over the 5 years the existing projects. Want to talk about the projects for fiscal year 17-18 and their status. So we have Perkins Peninsula Play Structure. The Parks and Animal Services Division was unsuccessful in getting a grant under the Local Government Opportunity Grant Program administered by State Parks. Last year, it's staff intention to reapply for that. And so we have preliminary plan drawings. We have it pretty much laid out. We had a public process out at the park and got some public feedback. There is public support. There's even support for volunteer help in erecting the playground once we get it funded. So there's definitely community support for the project that's been demonstrated, and we're hopeful to get the grant. If we don't get the grant, we can't build the project. Hendricks Bridge Park boat ramp. We're working with the Oregon State Marine Board to improve that ramp. It's been a multi-year project. Basically, the first phase was to replace the bathroom, and we did that 2 years ago now. And now we've been working on the second phase, which is an expansion of the parking lot at the boat ramp and then reorienting the boat ramp. Right now it's perpendicular to the river flow, so it's a constant maintenance issue. The toe of the ramp is constantly getting washed out. We're having to replace rock every year. The idea is to change the angle of the boat ramp so it's more parallel to the river flow and provide some other opportunities for tie-ups and that kind of thing and widen the ramp. So we've been working with OSMB on that. Right now we're in the...
Because if ever you get your wheels over the toe of the ramp, boy, it takes
Yeah.
additional help getting out.
Yeah, and we hear about it, and also the ramp is used by search and rescue, so we want to make sure that the ramp is in good condition for emergency situations. So we're in the working with environmental agencies, as you can imagine, Mackenzie River, working in the river with concrete. There's a lot of environmental permitting that goes with this project, so we're in the midst of that right now. We hope to, I put it in fiscal year 17-18. At this point, that seems optimistic. It may be 18-19, but it's in the program for 17-18 at this point. Perkins Peninsula Park boat ramp expansion, as I said, has been removed and put on the projects for development list. And finally, Harbor Vista Campground Sewer. We continue to work with the City of Florence to bring city sewer to Harbor Vista Campground. It's going to require us to annex the park into the city. So we will be coming to you at some point with an annexation agreement with the City of Florence, and also a funding agreement that will help pay for those improvements to the park. So it's kind of, the campsites are in, but the sewer has not come in yet, and we haven't finished that project. So that's what this is. We're hoping to wrap that up. We do have a state parks grant, about $98,000 for the project, and we've spent some of that, but not all of that yet. So we're hoping to get that project completed. It does. This project also, talking about the funding package, has identified SDCs. This is the one project in the program that has SDC allocations, and it's $10,000 a year for each of the 5 years. And that is our proposal to the City of Florence for a deferred payment option for the improvement. So over the next 5 years, $50,000, maybe the next 5, whatever it takes to get to make the payment to the City of Florence for those improvements. We'll see how that goes. We haven't entered into earnest negotiations with the city yet, but we've kind of floated this idea, and we're talking about it with them. So those are the most current or upcoming projects. As you know, the first 2 years of the CIP are typically projects that are kind of far along in the planning and design process. And the last 3 years, they're pretty much haven't been developed yet. They're identified as priorities. We don't have funding for them, but they are programmed as priorities in the program. If there is funding that comes available or other opportunities that avail themselves that say, hey, do you guys have a project in line? We can go to the 3rd year, 4th year, 5th year and say, yeah, these are our priorities. The Parks Advisory Committee held a public hearing on March 13th on the 5-year plan. There was one member of the public who submitted testimony regarding the listing of Eagle Rock Park development in the projects for future development list. It was still identified as an $800,000 improvement. As you know, we got some specific comments on our master plan draft regarding Eagle Rock. So in response, the Parks Advisory Committee decreased the amount identified to $100,000. Still identifying that there could be some investment in Eagle Rock, but not at the $800,000 level. And they also, PAC also increased the amount identified for the Buford Park Master Plan, which is our next priority. After the Parks Master Plan is adopted, our next priority is to update the Howard Buford Recreation Area Master Plan and increase that amount to $75,000. It was $50,000, and the Parks Advisory Committee felt that that wasn't enough for that plan. So those are the two changes that were made by the Parks Advisory Committee. The Finance and Audit Committee reviewed the recommended plan on April 20th and unanimously recommended it to be adopted by the board. I am available for questions.
Thank you. Any questions, Commissioner Lycan?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So, Mike, thank you very much for the presentation. So about 3-4 weeks ago, something like that, we had the interpretive center
Yeah.
On the, and this was up the McKenzie, so the fish hatchery. And that, if I remember right, that was, we voted to amend the 17 to 21 CIP on that. Would that show on here, or is that already far along that, obviously it's not, I wouldn't classify it as future because
Right.
it seems to be already moving along. So would that show on here or not?
So that was $10,000 for this fiscal year. So this.
Okay, this fiscal
program
year.
is-
Got it. Okay.
Starts next fiscal year.
Very good.
So, yeah.
Okay.
It was amended, but it's for this fiscal year.
Got it. I'm good. Thank you.
Yeah.
Excellent. Further questions? Commissioner Bozievich.
So I ask this almost every year. Do you have an estimate on deferred maintenance for parks?
Yeah, currently we're estimating about 17 million, and that's based off of an inventory and analysis that was done in 2012 related to deferred maintenance in all counties in Oregon. And at that time, it was a little over 16 million, but we feel it's growing. And so costs for construction, for instance, and those kinds of things, we're estimating about $17 million backlog.
So as we look at a five-year capital plan that's only spending 3.2 plus, it doesn't put a dent in our 17 million backlog.
Right.
As people should understand how underfunded our park system is. And I'm just going to make a quick plug in here for our legislators to pass Senate Bill 327, which is the fix for recreational immunity after the Johnson versus Gibson decision blew a hole in recreational immunity. If it doesn't pass, we may have to look at closing our park system down because we can't afford the liability of our employees being able to be sued individually for people that choose to recreate on county property and get injured. So hopefully that will get passed and we'll be able to continue to provide a park system to our public. But real concern there that immunity that is provided under state law allows us to, basically folks that choose to come onto that property, and then also private owners, timber owners that allow folks to come on to hunt or fish, same thing, or to cross a piece of property to access a river. If you get injured while crossing that property, you don't get to turn around and sue the property owner because he gave you permission to access the property for recreation. It would put up a lot of fences if it doesn't pass. So I'm hoping we can get that one through.
Can you say that bill number again?
Senate Bill 327, A engrossed, if you want to.
So it has been amended. Okay, great.
Yes, and Parks completely supports that bill and is waiting to provide testimony to that fact.
Yeah, Lane County is listed on the coalition for recreational immunity letterhead. There's a whole group of cities, counties, private landowners. You can imagine what a warehouser might have to do if they can't get recreational immunity, because this decision basically blew a hole in it, and what that will do to hunting season, mushroom picking, other activities on private lands that may not be affordable, and if they can't provide that immunity.
Thanks for bringing that up, Commissioner Bozievich. Further questions or comments? Then, Mr. Russell, I have just a couple of brief comments. I said I always love seeing you here because it's about parks. And you mentioned to Commissioner Bozievich just now a $17 billion plus backlog in maintenance. Now, I've always considered that parks were one of the earliest and deepest programs affected by our the loss of timber revenues or the loss of federal payments. Easy to cut parks because it's not a crucial public safety service. And so through the years, we've seen parks get slashed and slashed. I kayaked around the north part end of Perkins Peninsula this last summer. I do it fairly frequently. And there used to be a very nice ramp all the way around, a nice walking path and stairs all the way around, all of which have been ravaged by the winter weather. And I would guess that that's not even on the maintenance list to repair some of the old.
I don't know if that's section specifically, but the revetment around our parks, the Fern Ridge parks, is definitely on there. It's a problem.
And if you go to Orchard Point, you see the significant decay on the northern shore there. So it's, but that being said, we still have great parks, and we still have how many parks in Lane County?
70.
70 parks, and how many boat ramps?
36.
36 boat ramps. Now, a lot of people use the parks, a lot of people use the boat ramps and have no clue that this is their Lane County at work. It's one of the things that we do that's the most recognizable, which is kind of interesting that we have no one here to watch your presentation. I'm assuming that people like to watch this at home, and that we've got hundreds of, maybe thousands of people watching this right now, because we know how many people are going to use the parks this summer. And if it comes to the point that Commissioner Bozievich just brought up, that we have to close down our park system, people would recognize that immediately. Yeah. And thanks for your work, Mr. Russell. I try to say that as often as I can, because I see the work that you do and the results that we achieve from your work. So thank you very much. Further comments? Then, Commissioners, we do have before us order number 17050904. Do I have a motion?
So I'll move approval of the order.
Second.
Moved by Commissioner Bozievich and seconded by Commissioner Lycan. That's in the matter of adopting the recommended 5-year Parks and Open Space System Development Charge Capital Improvement Plan. Any discussion to the motion? I see none. I'll call for the vote. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Passes unanimously. Ms. Russell, thank you very much.
Thank you.
And we'll see you next week. And we're going to be in Florence next week talking about parks a little bit. And maybe in passing, we'll talk about Harbor Vista and our future partnership with Florence on Harbor Vista.
Thank you.
Moving along then to county administration announcements. Mr. Rickoff.
Chair Farr, Commissioners, I have a few announcements for you today. Both of them concerning the elections and the Office of the County Clerk. I did want to report that countywide voter registration is now at 246,477. The voter registration is up 20% due to the automatic voter registration from the Oregon Motor Voter Law. So that is as large a number of voters as we've ever had. Voter turnout through Monday, yesterday evening, is 28,896 ballots returned. That's 11.63%. This is the lowest amount we've had in quite some time. Certainly in the elections of 2015 and 2013, the comparables, it was sizably more than that. The opening and pre-inspection of ballots begins on Friday. We'll utilize approximately 110 extra help to successfully complete all required tasks for this election. Please remember that a ballot is not handled by any individual. It's always a team of two of differing political parties, just to ensure the safety of the ballot, the security of the ballot. Commissioners, you received some correspondence over the weekend concerned with a voter's pamphlet. I wanted to address that briefly. First and foremost, voters can review all candidate filings on the county clerk's website. These filings include the information for all districts, all candidates, and includes the information about the candidate's education, work, and government experience. A voter's pamphlet would not necessarily include all of that. The last time a voter's pamphlet was put together in 2015, there were 209 positions open. 33 individuals chose voluntarily, because it's a voluntary effort, to submit information to the voter's pamphlet. So one can never be assured that they're actually getting all the possible information, all the pertinent information on a particular race. Again, the decision or the recommendation from the county clerk not to print a voter's pamphlet comes down to it is logistically complex for a far less complete product when everything now is available online. Do remember that there's a 1-week window for preparing and proofing a ballot. In this current election, there are 247 distinct ballot styles. Individual, because of precinct divisions and all of the rest, we actually have 247 different ballots within Lane County for those 247,000 voters. All of that needs to be proofed in a 1-week window before we need to get overseas and military ballots out and available to the public. So it's a very tiny window, and the same people that are proofing the ballot would need to be doing the cat herding and proofing of a voter's pamphlet, when right now everything's available online. We could talk about the expense, the voter's expense of having to produce, print, and mail out to all the households within Lane County. It's a significant expense that the voters would have to bear, in addition to the logistics complexities. Are there any questions or thoughts, or the things I've left uncovered about the voter's pamphlet?
Commissioner Bozievich.
So I just don't really have a question, just want to say our staff there is doing a wonderful job. There are other places in the state where people got empty ballot envelopes or got the wrong ballots. And I can say that did not happen in Lane County with the 200 and some odd different ballot styles. Everybody seems to have gotten the correct ballots on time. So it's a pretty amazing job that they've done. It's not easy to do, as is obviously shown that other counties have had issues in just trying to get that part of the elections process done.
Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Bozievich. Commissioner Sorensen.
Thanks a lot. Hey, Mr. Rickoff, thank you so much for the presentation. I have been asked a few questions about the election and how it's conducted, and I think that you gave a lot of good information right there on that's useful to the public to know about how seriously Lane County takes the responsibility to make the ballot style. That's kind of a term of art we use, but make up the ballot. And to a lot of people, they go, well, you just make it up, right? Well, they don't realize that their neighbor across the street may live in a different precinct, and that neighbor is going to get a different ballot. And at times we've had hundreds of different types of ballots to make up. So making up each ballot isn't just, it's not like one county, one ballot. It's like one country, one ballot. No, it's right down to the precinct and who can vote within that precinct. So that's helpful. One thing you didn't cover is what are the rights. This comes up particularly with candidates who are running for the first time. They don't exactly know who, and their campaigns don't know who to call at the elections to find out how to monitor, how to lawfully monitor the election counting process. Could you tell us a little bit about that?
That's a great question. And every election there are monitors. Sometimes they have party affiliation. Sometimes they're representatives of individual candidates. They need to coordinate that in advance with the county clerk. She will set that up. Again, because of the rigorous process of ballot handling and the limited space in the building, folks need to connect with Cheryl Betchart and to ensure that it's not overflowing. But she is available at the Lane County elections. Her, I can't say for sure what phone number to call, but her phone number is a public number, area code 541-682-4328. And she will help people respond and understand their rights to view the process. We depend on transparency. We depend on public oversight and public understanding. So again, just as we would encourage everyone to vote, we'd encourage folks to contact the county clerk and understand the process, and if they do have a connection to the election and are the duly recognized representative of a candidate or a party, they're allowed to come in and observe.
Further questions? I heard from a couple of 4J members last night. Evidently, there were people at the 4J board meeting last week who were questioning the fact that there wasn't a voters pamphlet. And I'd like to thank both you and Ms. Beshart for the responses that you provided regarding the reasons for no voters pamphlet, and also the options for getting information, which you just delineated out loud a moment ago. So thanks for doing that. I have a question. Strange situation occurred with the constituent who recently moved from one location to another and has not received their ballot. Can you say out loud how if they haven't received the ballot after a recent move, how can they track it?
Well, they should check in with the county clerk immediately to see which residents they're currently registered to vote at. There's people are relying now with the passage of the Oregon Motor Voter that the Department of Motor Vehicles will somehow catch them up with an updated voter registration. That's true to an extent, although within 20 days of an election, if it's very recent, they actually need to take the further step to go in and affirm that they are a registered voter. And if they don't do that, they won't receive a ballot. Okay. Anybody who believes they should have received a ballot and didn't should call the clerk's office really as soon as possible. And they're able to reprint and hand ballots there at elections, and we'll do that up to and on the day of election. Okay.
Excellent. That's a good response, and I can pass that along. And it seems like a pretty easy process to track that. Then
the individuals that work in that office, and there's 5 full-time individuals. As I mentioned, we'll have about 110 part-time individuals coming in to help with that work. They care deeply about the process. We have the right people doing the right job. Their commitment to fair, open, timely, consistent elections is nothing short of remarkable. So I thank you for your praise today.
And I have a couple more questions. We have a 10 o'clock time certain with 22 minutes before that.
Yes, we do.
There were a couple of other things down the agenda we can go to. But regarding what if somebody has been living at a residence and they move away to a different jurisdiction, and the ballot still comes to that residence? Is it okay for the people who live there to go ahead and vote?
The only individual that can use that ballot is the individual that the ballot was mailed to. And there are certain occasions where, because of moves, other circumstances where there might be 2 ballots arriving for the same individual, only one of those will be counted, and it will be the last recognized address of that individual. So often when we talk of voter fraud, it's because people have voted multiple times. Usually the only time that happens is because an individual is unsure which ballot is the one they should be using, and actually the county clerk's office will know that and will only count one.
So if you somehow get 2 ballots with your name, even if you vote twice, only one will be counted?
Only one will be counted.
Excellent. And then the ballot that comes in error, should that be returned to the clerk or just destroyed?
It should be destroyed, but it should be acknowledged. It's helpful for the clerk to know what's going on and understanding. We follow up literally on every ballot, and as individuals know who have perhaps changed their signature over time, although those signatures get examined, as I think most of you are aware, I'll speak on behalf of my mom, longtime member of the League of Women Voters, has helped register tens of thousands of individuals in this state to vote. With the onset of her Parkinson's, her handwriting has changed greatly over the last dozen years. It's been intriguing to talk to staff that they actually, because they have every signature of hers on record and in the system, they can actually see the morphing of her signature over time and know that it's a legitimate ballot. But if there's somebody changes their name, decides they want to sign their name with a flourish, they're actually going to get a card from the county clerk saying, we need your help in determining that this is the correct individual voting on this ballot. It's a daily part of their work.
And then I do have another question regarding the number of items on this ballot. I received my ballot, and we have the sheriff's levy was on there, and also the only other thing on there were Bethel School District. Now I understand that different jurisdictions throughout the county have different things on the ballot, fire districts, for instance. And
Correct.
so my question, I think there are how many? Something like 60 different jurisdictions that have different ballots.
That would be my
That's a number,
guess,
yeah.
a rough estimate. Cheryl would know for sure, and if she's attending to this, it's likely that I'm receiving texts even as we speak.
And the next question I have, sometimes we carry Eugene, sometimes Springfield, sometimes other cities, municipalities. Can you tell us how much those municipalities and jurisdictions reimburses for the work that our clerk's office does, the county clerk's office?
I'd love to defer to Cheryl on that. During the even year elections, those are costs borne by the state and county. In the odd year elections, like we have now, the jurisdictions will pay for those elections, and there's very rigorous formula that goes in that counts the number of registered voters within that jurisdiction and applies an equation that the jurisdiction then needs to pay. That's true for the smaller special districts. It's not true for municipalities. So there's the county clerks of Oregon will always have legislation coming up that tries to even the playing field in terms of how that formula is applied and making sure that everyone pays their fair share of the cost of running an election.
Perfect. Well, thank you. Any further questions for Mr. Strickhoff on the announcements? Then we have next on our agenda is 17050905, which is a 10 o'clock time certain, but we have a couple of items down the agenda. County Council is not here for announcements.
Chair Farr, if I may, I am receiving updates, valuable information. The County Clerk, Cheryl Betchart, would like folks to know that people can update their voter registration up to 8 p.m. on election eve. If folks want to check to see the status of their ballot, OregonVotes.gov is the way to do that. Oregon Votes, all one word. There are 65 distinct districts, so that was a very good estimate, Chair Farr. The districts pay the full cost of this election, and it's based on the number of voters and the number of positions, so it is a pretty complex formula that has the sharing of the costs of the elections.
Excellent.
So, and I will thank Cheryl from a distance providing accurate and timely information.
It's good to know that that Cheryl is watching. Thank you very much, Cheryl. I know you can hear me at this point in time. It's the work that happens in that office is amazing. If you go in there when there are no elections going on, it's it seems a pretty slow-moving office. But if you go in there between now and especially Tuesday and Wednesday and maybe even Monday of next week, it's going to be like an anthill.
As the Director of Operations, I have a rich and varied portfolio, but I have to tell you what the county clerk's office does and how the elections are managed by the election staff truly is a profound piece of work. They really do a remarkable job. They take it seriously. They care. They enjoy themselves. They treat their remarkable part-time employees well. It really is a sight to behold to see the democratic process at work.
Yeah. I have an anecdote from somebody who went in to sign up to register for election in one of the smaller school boards. And they went in, and the school board in question had seat numbers. And this person was signing up and put the wrong seat number in. And the folks down there said, no, that's not you. Your seat number, whatever it was, and corrected them. So, I mean, the work goes far beyond what's in the work, let's say in the job description, I guess.
I care deeply.
Thank you. Then moving along, no announcements from County Council. Commissioner's business. Please have some business. Commissioner Lycan.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So yesterday at AOC Day, a couple things. Transportation Committee Senator Beyer was our guest, and he gave us a preview of the Joint Committee on Transportation when they made their announcement at 5:30 last evening, announcing the transportation package, and it's a 10-year plan. I've seen different numbers. It's my understanding the press reported 8.2 billion. We've heard it's about 7.5 billion, so it'll be interesting what that numbers are. But there's some nice projects that are included in Lane County specific, and the large one would be the on Beltline. So there's going to be some major improvements talked about on Beltline, and that's actually when I've talked to Senator Beyer about that. That's been very bipartisan on the Joint Committee support, and so I was glad to hear that. Also, Territorial Highway, which is something we've been working on here for a long time. There's quite a bit of money dedicated to that. That should complete the money to that 3 mile span to not just the planning but actually construction money as well. So that's pretty exciting to see, so it's pleased on that. And it's unveiling, as Commissioner Farr and Commissioner Sorensen know. You can unveil all you want. Then you have 58 members of the House and who knows how many, or 60 members of the House, 30 members of the Senate to take a look at it. So, and make their opinions known. So, but I'm really pleased to see that the Joint Committee has gotten this far, and I feel confident enough to unveil the package. So, very pleased.
Commissioner Lycan, 2 years ago, you followed the process pretty closely and were very disappointed at the end that it imploded. What's your prognosis based on your observation this time?
Obviously, I don't know what all the other legislators are thinking. From the joint member, the committee itself, I would say overall the prognosis is pretty positive. And, but we'll wait and see. We'll wait and see where it goes. But there seems to be, top priority on a transportation package, not only from the leadership of the legislature, but also the governor herself, which I think will help propel this along. It's been very open and transparent. I know that, as we all know, the Joint Committee did their roadshow and heard from folks all throughout the entire state. I'm pleased to see the different commissioners from different parts of the state that are supporting their legislators, and in particular on the eastern side, which, as we know, is pretty conservative. But talking to our eastern commissioners, in particular Commissioner Weimer and Judge Gary Thompson and others, they're very supportive of Cliff Bentz and the work he's doing, and that's really, really important. So Representative Bentz doesn't feel like he's by himself, but he's getting strong support from his local leadership as well, and I think that's going to be very beneficial moving forward. But again, there's a lot of details, a lot of I think opportunity. And anytime you get a chance to call your legislator, I would suggest you do so and just encourage them to be as supportive as possible. That transportation affects all of us, and it's not just getting from here to there. It becomes a massive economic development tool as well, and to help bring in another additional economic development opportunity. So I feel good about it so far.
Thank you, Commissioner Lycan. Further comments, items? Commissioner Sorensen.
I just want, on this transportation package, I think this is really a crucial thing for the state to be involved in. Cities and counties can pass gas taxes, and they can attempt in some cases to pass vehicle registration fees, but ultimately we see local governments often hesitate to put measures in front of their voters because of border problems. That if you're in Cottage Grove and you have a gas tax, you can sneak over to Cresswell and buy your gas, or if Lane County puts in a gas tax, people can go to Harrisburg or stop to and from Albany on their way back to Lane County. So, and on the coast, going an extra 15 miles to Reedsport isn't that difficult if you're a tourist and you hear about a high gas tax in some community. So I think having the state take this role is a really good one. One thing Commissioner, you could educate us on, Lycan, is, this proposes to spend more money than we're currently spending to make improvements. Where does the money come from?
So thank you, Commissioner Sorensen. It's going to come from several pots of money. You can obviously gas tax increase, and they're looking at a gas, I believe about a 5 cent now, but also about 2 cents for the every other year on the gas tax. Registration fees. They're going to put together a fee, so when you purchase a new car, there'll be a fee there. You had to get, I thought it was kind of funny, but they're going to put together a bicycle licensing fee. That was actually to get more Republicans on board. The reality is that's probably going to raise about maybe $400,000. And the thing that they're looking at is that it's only going to raise a minimum amount. Keep the administration side of it low, because what you'll end up getting is that you'll have it administratively spending too much money just to deal with a bicycle licensing fee. So they're very cognizant of that. Also, tolling is going to be discussed as well, and that's going to be more or less in the north, in the metro area. And if you talk to our colleagues from Washington and Clackamas County and Multnomah County, they're open to that, and they actually are interested in tolling, especially on those very busy thoroughfares such as 217, I-205. There's potential tolling there, potential tolling on I-5 as well. And because of technology today, you don't stop. And as Commissioner Farr shared this, you don't stop. And it's technology based, and so you're not stopping at a toll booth. Instead, it's I don't know exactly what it does, but the technology is there, so you can continue moving forward. But you'll be assessed a toll at a later date, or whatever the case may be, I think is how it works. So they're looking at different avenues there, and I think what I would suggest, Commissioner Sorensen, stay tuned. And obviously, we're very fortunate, I think, here locally. We have Senator Beyer, and then Representative McEwen, who represents quite a bit of Lane County as well. But they're the two co-chairs. Representative Lively is also on the committee, and Senator Edwards used to be, so he's obviously not now. And I think that's our local members on the committee themselves. I may be wrong. So we have good Lane County representation, but still, obviously folks like Representative Nathanson, co-chair Ways and Means, is going to be key in this whole conversation. So stay tuned. We as a committee, I've asked Mike Elias and our staff to continue to send information out to the committee, and I will forward it on so that as far as the county is concerned, and then we'll go from there. But I appreciate you asking that question, Commissioner Sorensen, because it's going to be, I would suggest, lively. But I think you hit the nail on the head. This is so crucial and critical going forward on this package, so I appreciate that. So I don't want to use any more of my time, but that's kind of a snapshot of what we're looking at. Appreciate that.
Just briefly, I got a bill in the mail for driving over the Golden Gate Bridge.
Yeah, there you go. Yep.
Commissioner Sorensen, did that cover your question? Commissioner Bozovich.
Thank you. So I spent 2 days in Salem in the last week, and the first day was Justice Reinvestment Advocacy Day there, where the folks at AOC took point in bringing together a bunch of different groups to advocate for justice reinvestment funding, which has been critical to diverting people from prison or keeping them from recidivating and going back to prison once they're released. And I got to meet with just about I think I've met every legislator that's from Lane County that day. They managed to meet with 70, I think, plus of the 90-some legislators that day with different people, and usually elected officials and sheriffs and police chiefs. They had victims' rights folks from the League of Women Voters. They had the Oregon Ecumenical Association was there, a wide group of advocates talking to the legislators. And it seemed like we are going to be, at least in that pot of funding right now, have strong support for basically continued level of service funding at just under $40 million. So good news there. It was interesting when I was in Senator Byers' office. He brought up the transportation package that time and said, I remember your words when we came out to Lane County on the tour, and I'm heeding those words. We're going to go big. Yeah. So it is really important because our infrastructure is aging and needs repair. And with the subduction zone earthquake, coming sometime in the future, we need to get our infrastructure in shape to withstand that. Yesterday was AOC legislative day up and Chair Farr mentioned some of the meetings we were in. I'm sorry to hear that Jackson County is pulling out of the Association of Oregon Counties. I can't see how they don't see the value in that. 2 days in the last week, they have been instrumental in coordinating a lot of work up in Salem. One of the things I sit on both the governance committee and also the co-chair of the public safety committee, so marijuana kind of gets woven in and out of both of those. And also when it doesn't conflict with those two committees, I also go to environmental and land use committee, which also brings marijuana into the question and some of the land use stuff. So there's a lot of talk about marijuana law yesterday, and particularly the sentencing reforms that they did to clarify some of the sentencing, to match up some of the minors in possession with alcohol laws. And they actually created a couple new offenses around some of the fires and explosions we've had in processing and getting them qualified as arson. So there was some interesting stuff on the public safety side, but one of the things that we hear most about as commissioners is medical grows and the problems of regulating and controlling medical grows in residential areas, the impact they have on neighbors. And there was a report that was kind of leaked in January about diversion of marijuana out of the legal system and into the black market that indicated that Oregon was the #1 contributor to black market marijuana in the U.S. and that the largest proportion of that is diverted out of the medical system. And one of the bills we're tracking up there is Senate Bill 1057, which would make medical growers have to utilize the tracking system that recreational growers utilize, seed to sale tracking, so that it would be less likely to be diverted into the black market, which might help get some of the less ethical growers out of the market, because we are obviously growing a surplus in this state to have that basically 80% diverted into the black market. And I think that's a really important thing that needs to move forward. It's kind of being tied to another bill, House Bill 2198, which has got some other reforms that some of the marijuana community wants also, so they're kind of being paired together, and AOC took action to support both bills as they're currently written. So it'll be helpful. We didn't get the local control we wanted on the medical. Would have been nice to have some time, place, and manner local control that we have on recreational. But at least if they go to seed to sale tracking, that should maybe help eliminate some of the problems we're having with medical.
Thanks for that report, Commissioner Bozievich. And I was intrigued by the few minutes I spent in that committee, the depth of presentation that Rob Bouvet, is that the correct pronunciation?
Yeah, I think
was presenting. It's amazing the information that comes out of there. And I had a chance to visit the CVSO in Polk County yesterday, which was eye-opening to me because Lane County, much of our veterans service work happens here in the metropolitan area. Well, Polk County's metropolitan area is East Salem, which is really not part of the county, but the rest of the county is very rural in nature, as is much of Lane County. So they have a lot of the same issues of getting services to veterans who are living in remote places in the county. So it's pretty exciting. One last thing for you, Commissioner Lycan, as we move forward with the transportation package, if we can find a way to put a high toll on the Washington license plates that flow into Oregon every morning between 6 a.m. and 8:45 a.m. over the bridge, and then go back at night.
Hurrah.
Photographic toll. And that brings us up to 10 a.m., which is perfect timing, and I see that our MWMC friends are here. Mr. Rickoff, we have before us Order 170509-05 in the matter of ratifying the fiscal year 2017-18 Regional Wastewater Program budget.
Thank you, Chair Farr. And I should, for our guests coming up to the table, remind folks that Steve Mokrahysky is unavailable today. He is taking some, unavailable this morning. He's taking some well-deserved time off with visiting family members working to improve the service economy of Lane County. He will be back with you this evening for Budget Committee. I'm being joined at the table, and forgive me if I butcher the names, Matt Stouter, Springfield Environmental Services, and the MWMC General Manager, Dave Breitenstein, Interim Eugene Wastewater Division Director, Catherine Bishop, Springfield Environmental Service Manager. And if I butchered your names, please forgive me and correct them as we go forward.
Thank you very much. Though that was a great job on the names. Usually my name gets butchered, but you did an excellent job, so thank you.
Good morning, Mr. Stouter. Could you tell us who's with you in the audience, perhaps?
Yes, we have Tanya Kling with the City of Springfield and John Hubert with the City of Eugene.
Thank you.
So good morning, Commissioners. It's a pleasure to be here today to talk to you about our budget for fiscal year 17-18. Introductions have been made, so I'll move to the next slide. So quick trip down memory lane for your benefit here. Wanted to just note that in 1972, Congress passed the Federal Clean Water Act. That was in response to the dramatic pollution of our nation's waterways and, in fact, the burning of the Cuyahoga River in Ohio on numerous occasions. As a result of that act, significant federal funding became available for parties that were interested in regionalizing wastewater treatment. City of Eugene and Springfield and Lane County took advantage of that opportunity to get some of that federal funding, and in 1977 entered into an IGA to form the MWMC. In 1984, the regional wastewater treatment plant came online, and in 1989 we constructed our biosolids management facility. In 2002, DEQ issued us one of our National Pollutant Discharge Elimination Systems permits, which is the permit that governs what activities we can do and what cleaned wastewater effluent we can discharge to the river. And then in 2004, the MWMC adopted our facilities plan, which has been our guiding document for the past number of years. This slide shows our service area. Our commission is a 7-member commission. I'd like to acknowledge Commissioner Pat Farr, who is our current Lane County Commissioner that serves on the board. I'd also like to acknowledge Commissioner Bozovich, who has served in the past, and then publicly thank Commissioner Faye Stewart, who served for a number of years on the MWMC. Our service area is about 225,000 people. It includes the areas inside the urban growth boundaries of Eugene and Springfield, includes a number of county residents that are hooked up in Santa Clara. And I'd also like to note that we provide service to septic haulers in the entire area of Lane County. As outlined under the IGA, just for your benefit, Springfield provides for the administrative functions of the MWMC, and Eugene provides for the operations and maintenance of our facilities. So we have a number of regional-owned facilities. We have roughly about $300 million worth of assets. That includes our wastewater treatment plant, which is on River Avenue. It functions, 365 days a year. It's running all the time. It has the capacity to treat up to 277 million gallons of flow per day. And I would encourage anybody who hasn't been out there recently, since we've done a significant amount of work, to come out and take a tour. We're always available to let people tour that facility.
It doesn't.
We also own and operate what we call our BioCycle farm, or our biosolids management facility. We grow poplar out here. We own 600 acres. About 400 of those acres are planted with poplar, and this is where we land apply our biosolids, our treated solids. We also dispose of our solids with cooperative agreements near the farm with farmers that work in Lane County. We have 3 management units of poplar. We recently harvested management unit 1 the last couple of years, and we have replanted that unit, and we took the products that we made from the poplar, we turned it into chips and put it back into the local market. So this morning we're here to ask for your approval to ratify our budget. I would note that prior to April 14th, the MWMC held 3 work sessions to discuss the budget, and then a public hearing before adopting on April 14th. The budget was ratified on May 1 by the City of Springfield and last night by the City of Eugene. Once the budget's been ratified by all 3 partners, we'll go back to the Commission in the June meeting for final adoption. Our work program is really driven by our key outcomes, which are shown on this slide. These outcomes are adopted by our commission, and they really drive our work. We look at these outcomes each year with the commission in detail. There's associated key indicators that are kind of associated with each outcome. We make minor incremental adjustments to these over time, and then they really, as I said, drive our work. So we made some slight outcome changes this year. We added a piece on systems development charges that we updated, and we are working on also an asset management project to help us make some refinements to our asset management tool. At this point, I'll turn it over to Catherine Bishop to discuss our financial plan strategy and a number of other slides.
Good morning. In terms of the financial plan strategy, we're continuing to use our system development charge revenues. That's revenues from new development that takes place to fund our debt service payments. We are maximizing capital transfers to our capital fund. You may recall about this time last year, we paid off about $14 or $15 million in revenue bonds, and so now we're trying to replenish our capital fund to be prepared for future capital projects. This year we're transferring $14 million from our operating fund to our capital fund, and we're also increasing our insurance reserve to $515,000. The MWMC maintains a rate stability reserve at $2 million in the event that a large industrial customer was to move or shut down, or if we had a significant change, which we don't anticipate in this economy, but you never know. And in terms of our rate increases, we like to see moderate and incremental rate increases. We don't ever want to have a spike in terms of our future rate forecast. And we are, as I said, working towards pay-as-you-go capital investments. So we're trying to replenish that capital reserve and also maintain a strong debt service coverage ratio. In terms of the rate change that the Commission adopted, it's a 3% rate change. It's effective July 1st. And for a customer, if we assume 5,000 gallons of wastewater treated, that would be on their bill at $25.84. So for that customer, it's about a 75-cent increase monthly. But we do have many customers. In fact, the majority of our customers actually have a lower usage based on the number of people in their household and their activities. And then, of course, we have some customers that have a little bit larger based on their family size. So while our rate increase was 3%, our actual budget increase is 3.3%. So this is the combined operating budget for Eugene and Springfield, which makes up that regional MWMC budget. And as you can see, the staffing or full-time equivalent remained fairly close to level. We did have a 0.10 increase to dedicate staff to some large capital programs that are going to be constructed over the next 2 years. In terms of our personnel expenses, in terms of salary and related benefits, a 4.8% increase, and then materials and services having to do with electricity, chemicals, parts is 2.1%. So overall, the budget has an increase of 3.3%, and that's just the budget plan. that we allow for. In terms of the actual expenses, we anticipate at this year end, to have a savings of about 1.7 million. So we do have flexibility within that budget to respond to changing operating activities. And so if we look back at the 5-year trend, these are the actual adopted operating budgets. You can see in fiscal year 17-18 in front of us that almost $18.3 million for operating budget. It's about 3.3% greater than the year before.
Okay, I'm going to talk briefly about our capital program. We have a number of projects that we're working on currently. One is what we're calling the Increased Digestion Capacity Project. We're looking to add a 4th digester to stabilize our solids prior to sending it out to our biosolids management facility. This project's needed for growth in the community as well as cleaning capacity requirements that we have. It's a large project. Total project cost is about $16.5 million. The project's expected to span several years. And the commission recently awarded this project to Sladen Constructors, formerly Sladen Construction. That project is beginning now, and as I mentioned, will span multiple years. We're also looking at some non-process improvements to our operations and maintenance facilities. We're going to be constructing a new water quality laboratory. Our lab is fairly dated. We perform over 22,000 tests per year in our lab, and so that's going to be a major driver of this project. We're also doing building improvements to our maintenance facilities, which includes replacement of one of our modular buildings that's reached the end of its useful life. The commission provided direction at the April meeting to award this project at a reduced scope level to Wildish Construction. We sent this project out to bid. We got 2 bids back. We had a couple of deductive alternates in this project that we had the bidders consider, and it came in over the engineer's estimate. And because of the concern with the budget, at this time the commission elected us to move forward with the water quality lab and the maintenance building, but we're not going to move forward with the operations building improvements. That project is expected to be awarded at our Friday meeting to Wildish, as I mentioned, and the construction for this project is expected to take multiple years and will be starting in the summer. The last project I wanted to talk about today is what we're calling our electrical distribution system replacement project. So we have a major electrical backbone at the plant that delivers power to all of our process facilities. These lines have basically reached the end of their useful life. They were constructed in the late 70s and early 80s before the plant came online, and they are subject to catastrophic failure. They're functioning now, but we know that they're at the end of their useful life, and failure could be disastrous for us. So we've recently completed a planning study looking at priority conductors and how we want to go about, what level of phasing we want to go about for replacement. We expect to put out an RFP for design services in May, and we expect construction to start in 2018 on this project. This slide is a rolled up summary of our capital budget and plan. Shows a 5-year forecast. I would note that the budget for this year is $35.5 million. 26.7 million of that is carryover from the previous fiscal year, and a large number of that amount budgeted for this year will carry over to next year for those projects that need to be awarded during the fiscal year, but then span multiple years for construction. So as we mentioned earlier, we would request your approval for the board order ratifying the fiscal year 17-18 Regional Wastewater Program Budget and Capital Improvement Program as approved by the MWMC, and happy to take any questions or comments that you may have at this time.
Thank you, Mr. Stauder. Questions, comments? Commissioner Sorensen.
I think my question relates to about the 3rd slide up there, and I'm going to ask if you could pull that up there. And is that the 3rd slide?
By the service area?
The service area.
I believe that's the 3rd slide.
3rd slide, okay. Could you go to the 4th slide? 5th slide? 6th slide? 2nd slide?
Subject.
That's the
First, second.
And, okay. My question deals with the budget item, maybe it was the next line. Is it the next line? Nope, one more. Well, without respect to these slides, let me ask my question this way. You mentioned that you wanted to have kind of a stabilization fund, I think it was around $2 million, that you wanted to have funded, there it is, rate stability reserve fund at $2 million. And you wanted to have this fund available to minimize spikes in rates and also guard against the possibility that a large user who pays a large amount of money would go offline, maybe shut down, bankruptcy, go out of business, shift their operations, put out less waste, whatever. So how do you determine that number? In other words, is it just, well, that's what we can afford, which would be the way I would do it in my own personal life, or is it more of an industry standard of other waste management agencies, and there's some kind of way to come up with that number? Could you just give us that number?
Right.
Or how that's done?
Actually, it was the commission that adopted that policy and determined through communication with one another and input from staff to establish it at $2 million. We've never touched this reserve, but it's there and available. And
is it part of an audit where the auditors say, hey, you should have a rate reserve, or you should have this money, and we would recommend X percentage of some number or an average of several numbers within the agency's budget?
Right. And the other benefit of having the rate stability reserve is from a credit rating standpoint, in terms of, do you have a rate stability reserve? Could you handle a change in the activity?
So I can speak to that a little bit as well. This was, as Catherine mentioned, this was set up a number of years ago by the commission, in part in response to the Hynex closure that we experienced. And as a result of that, I think we had to do 15 to 18% rate increases mid-year, which were not very popular, as you can imagine. This is, I think, has been established in our financial plan policy as well. I don't have the history, since it was quite a few years ago when this occurred, as to whether or not how the discussion was framed. My assumption is that we collect a set amount of revenues every year. We look at our user base and say, if one of our largest users was to shut down and move out, what would a comfortable amount be in our rate stability reserve fund to not have to go out and ask for a large
And my
increase?
question is that based upon something other than our own community's experience, or is that based on an industry standard? That's my question. Not is it a good idea? Yes, it's a good idea. Not why did we do it? Well, Hynex. But now, what is the computation of that $2 million? Is it high? Is it low?
Commissioner, I'd have to get back to you on that and look. Like I said, it was established a number of years ago and has been set. Yep. It's probably, my thought would be, if it was set 10 years ago, it's less than it was. It's on a percentage basis, it's less than it was 10 years ago, and we can certainly look at it whether it needs to be increased.
Well,
or not.
I think to conclude this phase of my question, that would be great if you could send us an email, maybe to all those city councilors and commissioners, and just say, a question was raised about how we set the $2 million. We set it because the board set it, and, here's what other people are doing, or here's what, and we may consider changing it up or down.
I'd be happy to do that, and I'd request that I'd send it back through the commission liaisons, so Commissioner Farr, and have him pass it along.
Sounds great. My second question has to do with the budget number, and I don't remember which page, and we don't need to explore that at the moment. But the example you were given was, in a given home, the cost would be about a 75-cent increase. Right. And this question deals with the ratio of your residential customers paying money for disposal of their wastewater versus all other customers. So you got a lot of residential customers, and you can say, oh, well, we have X thousand residential customers. You got other people paying money too. Those might be industrial, commercial, other, whatever. My question is there a ratio of that payer base where the business community could be reassured that the payments they're making are again, back to national industry standards, are within a tolerance level of what most industries are paying. And then similarly, that residents and residential payers could look at that payer mix and go, oh, well, in the average American wastewater district or city or county that's administering it, the average is 55% or 46%, and ours is 48% or whatever. So do you have that data, or is that available, or how much work would that be, or is there a way to answer my question?
Yes, let's start with the residential, because the largest share of our customer base is residential.
What percentage roughly?
It's in over 90% is residential customers. And because I would say that multifamily falls into the commercial category, so to make that clear. And in terms of, we do a rate comparison on at least an annual basis, and where we fall into place in terms of Springfield is slightly different than Eugene because we have a different local wastewater collection component. But within the cities that we compare to, the average is $50.42 monthly for both local and wastewater treatment services. And Springfield is at $47.40. Eugene is at $35.96 when we look at the adopted rates before this is put into place. So over the last year, in terms of the rate increases, on average, it was a 5.4% increase, but the other communities ranged from 1.9 up to 15.9, and both of those ends are within our county, whereas the regional component went up 3%. So we feel that we have reasonably priced for residential, and that we're actually below the average in that comparison. In terms of the commercial, it gets more complex because our rate structure takes into consideration the strength of the discharge, what is actually in that discharge. And so when you have large industries, you have higher strengths of discharge, so the rate that they're charged is increasing based on what it takes to treat that end product that's coming into the system. And in those cases, customers, industrial customers, large customers, have opportunities to do pre-treatment on their site. They could put into place infrastructure to reduce the product that's leaving their facility should they want to manage their bill in a way that would be more cost effective in the long run. And so there are opportunities for commercial businesses from pricing of their product to recoup some of that expense, to infrastructure improvements on site, to increase efficiency, reduce strength, discharge. And so it's really difficult to compare because it's not a full apples to other communities.
I would add that nationally it's really difficult to compare as well because you're dealing with water quality standards which set the limits of what you can discharge to the receiving water body. And depending on where you're at in the country and what the regulations look like, they're not even. And so in the Northwest, we have much more stringent water quality standards than they do elsewhere. Like I said, it's not apples to apples, but so that drives the capital investment that you need to make in your systems, and that then drives your rates as well.
I guess I'll conclude by saying I think that it would be helpful for your agency to be able to respond to the criticism that you're letting the bigger customers pay less. And it would be in your interest to have data that shows that no, we're not. We're charging the residential ratepayers a fair amount because of this data that we're showing you, rather than, not comparing it to others opens you up to the criticism that you're making it easier for the larger companies to pay less to process the waste. And my suggestion is that you get some comparative data, even if it's just comparative data in the Northwest, where the water quality standards are the same in one state, or slightly, mostly the same, like Oregon and Washington. And to me, that way you'd be able to respond to this question: how come I'm paying more than I should? Well, the answer isn't just, we do the best we can, which I think is a good answer, but it'd be better to say, you know what, the average ratepayer in Olympia and Spokane and Salem, the average ratepayer there pays this percentage of the total cost. In our district, you pay the same.
And I would be clear that we're very comfortable speaking to the individual industry on a one-on-one basis, because the situation is unique for that particular customer. And so if there is a customer out there that feels that they're not being, clear on what the charges are and what the charges are based on, we'd be more than happy to have a call from that customer and work directly with them on their individual situation.
I appreciate your comments as well. Thank you, Commissioner. And I certainly think we have that information and would make it available. On a residential basis, we most definitely have it and can speak to it today. Given the uniqueness of a commercial or industrial user, we'd have to look at the case, and but we do have that information and could provide it to them.
Commissioner Sorensen, thanks for those questions. And as your new representative, I'll follow through on that with my natural curiosity. If the answers are there, we'll be able to provide them and satisfy the question. Thanks very much. And Matt, thank you also for one of the last things that you said, is that it's difficult to compare us with other facilities because there's nobody else really like us in terms of the water quality, for one thing, and also in terms of the regional nature of our collection and redistribution. And I will say one last thing before I open it to other commissioners, and that is that downstream from where we return water to the Willamette River, one of the cleanest rivers in the nation for its size and the number of municipalities that it flows through, downstream there's quite a bit of recreational activity, from fishing to swimming to boating, all kinds of things immediately downstream. And years ago, I asked Peter Ruffier, am I okay swimming downstream? And he said, yes. Further questions from the commissioners. Commissioner Lycan.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So appreciate the presentation, and very, very much. A couple questions. First question is, I think when I think of an MWMC, you're a pretty good indicator of residential permitting, residential as far as building is concerned. So we've seen a hot real estate market. Do you see a continued increase from your end as far as residential, especially residential permitting is concerned, and people that are hooking up to MWMC? Can you just comment on that real briefly?
Yes, Commissioner, I can comment on that. We don't really see the increase at the permit activity level because the permits go through the local agencies of Springfield and Eugene. We would see the impacts from the flow coming to the plant.
Yeah.
Actually, what we've seen is a reduction of flow over the past several years for our base flow. What we're seeing is that graph that we showed earlier, where people were looking at 5,000 gallons of usage in a month. Actually, people are starting to conserve more water and they're using less water. And so our base flows are actually slightly decreasing in the summertime. So that's kind of where we're at.
Is it less building, or just the people just making changes in their everyday lives?
I think it's the building level is, I can speak to the local side on Springfield. The building level has increased on the residential side in the last year and a half. But I believe on the wastewater side of things, they've been using less amount of water overall. And
one component of that is the plumbing code.
Yeah.
The building code becomes more restrictive, more water efficient, and the washing machine, the dishwasher becomes more water efficient.
I used to own coin ops in the past, and I will tell you that we purchased front-loading Wasco mats for a reason, because you saw a 40% reduction in energy costs and water usage in those typical, washers that you'd see in a laundromat. Mm-hmm. And we did that on purpose. And so I'm not that surprised. Technology is pretty amazing when you just walk into like an Oldfields or any appliance store and see brand new, really what's there, and they'll tell you right in front of you that the reduction you'll see in energy and water usage is pretty significant. So that makes sense. Second question is the Glenwood pump station upgrade. So it looks like that's scheduled for 2018 is what you're looking at. And frankly, Glenwood seems to be, it's going to be busy because you'll have the I-5, you'll have Franklin corridor. So we got the STIP money in there to even that out. But I noticed the Glenwood station, this also is beneficial not just for Glenwood, but for Laurel Hill and the Laurel Hill area. Can you comment on that, or is that something?
Yes, Commissioner. That project. So when that pump station was installed, that station is a regional asset because it serves flow for Eugene and Springfield. Yeah. There was an anticipated growth in the community, and we left reserve capacity for additional pumps to be put in there when the need arose. We're estimating, based on current planning, that in 2018 is the time when, for redundancy purposes and other requirements, that we'll need to install additional pumps. And so I don't anticipate a whole lot in the way of construction activity as far as congestion and that sort of stuff, other than what's already out there. But that would be an estimate of when we need to put pumps in to handle bigger flows.
Well, developers will watch that and we'll see, well, I guess, you know what, this is real. And because it's got to take the public investment on something like as crucial as whether it's the on the MWMC side, the transportation side. I think eWeb is looking at a potential building of a new operation there in the Willamette River as well. I mean, frankly, it's kind of exciting to see the public investment going to look to be happening in Glenwood, which even has a better opportunity to spur on the private economic development side. So I just saw that and I saw the date and I said, well, that makes sense. And so appreciate that. Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Commissioner Lycan. Further questions? Commissioner Bozievich.
So I'll start off with trying maybe to rephrase one of Commissioner Lycan's questions. Instead of asking about permits, I'll ask about SDC growth rate, because that's the indicator of permits.
Thank you. That's what I was getting at.
Yeah. So has there been a change in your SDC income? Is it increasing? Are you seeing a
Yes, is the answer. And it's been incremental and ongoing. It actually started back when there was more, here in Eugene, student-related housing projects. That's when we were starting to see a slight rise or tick up, and that's continued with other types of developments thereafter. It's not, it's not a guarantee in the future, so we're very conservative when we project for that, and then we adjust our projections as we move closer to that point in time.
Great. So I don't get you guys in front of me very often, so some of these questions are tangential to budget in some ways. But, I drive past the Poplar Farm pretty often because I come in and out of town that direction a lot, and Junction City's in my district. Mm-hmm. So is the whole Poplar Farm, actually. Looked like the ice storm hit it pretty hard. Did that have a major impact on the value of the crop, and is that adjusted for in your budget?
Yeah.
Yeah. So, we're working with FEMA. So it was part of the declared disaster. Okay. And we actually had a few things. So at our water pollution control facility, we had debris removal, we had large limbs, we had landscape damage, that type of thing. Initial activity for MWMC involved taking out portable generators to various pump stations and just keeping the system flowing. But the larger expense is on the Poplar Farm. And so with the ice and branches and trees down, if you've maybe seen trees down, we have aerials. And so that's going to be, in total for MWMC, the estimates are just under $250,000. We're working with FEMA. We've together submitted about 3 claims so far, but the poplar activity really needs to dry out. The soil has been wet and soggy, so there'll be an additional harvest this year.
I can respond to that as well. The Management Unit 1 was not harmed. That was recently replanted. Our MU2 was scheduled to be harvested next year. That sustained about a 30% damage. 30% of the trees were lost. However, they're just sitting there. And so we're moving our harvest up to this year, and we're going to be able to salvage most of those trees, as well as harvest the remainder. But as Catherine, so we're not going to be out our whole MU2 by any means. As Catherine mentioned, we have the numbers for estimates for loss, but we just, in response to the damage, we moved the harvest date up 1 year.
Great. Thank you. So I want to touch on a couple other subjects real quick. Reuse of water. And I think there was a pilot you guys had at one point with Delta. And has there been any expansion of that program? And where is that going? Because that's truly where we're going to get to meeting all of our TMDLs that constantly get stricter and stricter here in the Northwest. So.
Yes, Commissioner, we've continued to explore that. We have what we call a recycled water program. Delta, they've changed contacts. Our contact has changed a couple of times. We're continuing to pursue that as an opportunity to reuse water for gravel wash water. That's been not as fruitful as I'd hoped to date. There's no driver on their side to make any investments, so we're considering whether we want to invest ourselves for a demonstration project. There are some permitting concerns. I would note that we also have a number of other things we're looking at on the recycled water front. We do irrigate our poplar trees with our own recycled water, and we are looking at other demonstration projects. For instance, partnering with EWEB for firefighting facilities, for water for firefighting, looking at partnering with the City of Eugene to do demonstrations for street tree watering, those sorts of things. So that is something that we continue to explore. Right now, with our permit being on extension and anticipated to be renewed in a couple of years, we don't have a regulatory driver requiring us to do these things, but we've done a tremendous amount of planning on the recycled water front, as well as other projects to help us meet future thermal load obligations under the TMDL.
Yeah, and speaking of thermal load, there was also a pilot landscape management project where you guys were going to purchase shade easements and have trees planted. Has that continued on at all?
Yes, that has continued. We've done a project along the Springfield Mill Race and also a pilot project on Cedar Creek in Springfield that's been planted, and we're learning a lot from those projects. And I'm excited to say that we're actually partnering with EWEB to do to be part of their Pure Water Partners program, which they're looking at waters upstream in McKenzie for riparian restoration. We're going to partner with them for landowner outreach to do riparian shading as well. Right,
which if the biological opinion on the flood insurance program, the current reasonable prudent alternative stays in place, this program may become one of the places people look to for mitigation, the 3-to-1 mitigation requirements that are required in floodway development. And that's going to be a real issue in the future. So one of the things that RPA doesn't recognize are efforts like this that we are doing to manage temperature and aid in salmon recovery here in Oregon. So I know that the fish consumption rules hit you guys pretty heavily a few years back, and a lot of the capital program has been driven by those TMDLs on some very small components of wastewater discharge, and that kind of drove some of the tertiary treatment needs. How far from the river is that whole tertiary treatment facility? Is it within 170 feet?
It's probably about 300 feet, but I would like to clarify that the more recent improvements to increase plant capacity were based more on being able to meet wet weather flows and not so much meeting regulatory TMDLs. And the tertiary capacity that was designed into the facility currently is 10 million gallons, which is a very minor part. It was a part to help supplement what the treatment plant can do to meet the anticipated treatment requirements under the limits that are specified under the permit for the 20-year flow projection. Outlook 20 years, what the flows are going to be, what the plant can do. It was determined we need at least 10 million gallons a day tertiary treatment to meet the current permit limits.
Thank you. And just getting back to something Commissioner Sorensen said, and reminding that folks can put in that industrial pretreatment to keep their bills down. That it was in the news today that Deschutes Brewery is putting $11.3 million into a treatment plant for their brewery, and it probably is for that purpose, because I imagine they have a pretty high BOD, biological oxygen demand, coming from a brewery's effluent, So, there is a lot of investment out there beyond what you guys have in the way of wastewater treatment that actually happens even before it gets into the sewer system. So those large users tend to look at where's that balance between rates and capital investment and maintenance and operation on site. And I think Deschutes probably looked at it and said, maybe it's time for us to invest. Mm-hmm. And I think a lot of other folks do that. So there's a lot of industrial pretreatment that goes on in our community.
Thank you, Commissioner Bozovich. Further questions? Commissioner Williams.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. A couple of sort of a menu of thoughts and things that I've been thinking about. First of all, it's a great presentation. I thank you all for that. I can remember growing up on the Coast Fork of the Willamette River and starting a long time ago, but in the 70s, the Willamette River was classified as one of the 10 dirtiest rivers in the nation. In 1972, there was a National Geographic article that came out that highlighted the wastewater treatment plant in Cottage Grove, which had been rebuilt, and I believe, and excuse me if I don't get this right, but it was a tertiary treatment plant, I believe, and gained national recognition, National Geographic. Over the years, I've had an opportunity to secure various copies of that, and have actually had the opportunity to present that to Senator Wyden and Congressman DeFazio, because it was highlighted the Cottage Grove municipal system. And a couple of things also that just comes to mind. We went from one of the dirtiest rivers in the nation. You mentioned the one back east that caught on fire along about that same time. So in the historical context, it's just amazing that as a kid, when I'd throw an inner tube in the water, I had no idea that I was floating in a really nasty environment. That's not the case today, and it's a credit to science and technology, good management, on that we now have a clean river system. I'm also reminded that when we in Cottage Grove rebuilt our wastewater treatment plant a few years ago, more than a few years ago now, we were discharging, I believe, 35 pounds of orthophosphates in our TMDL. After we built our plant, we were discharging a quarter pound, from 35 pounds to a quarter pound. And so historically, I see these great opportunities that, best practices have been imposed and implemented, and I commend you for the work that you do. It's an environmentally sound thing. One other thing, and I'll close. We had an fairly large industrial operation in Cottage Grove that was causing some significant impact with our system, and they just simply went with a closed loop system, which was very, very beneficial to them and to us. So just kind of thinking out loud and reminded of some of the places I've been over the years in relating to this. So thank you again for the excellent work and presentation that you had today. And thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you very much. Further questions or comments? Just a couple of quick things myself. I'll have a chance to talk to you this week on Friday. Looking forward to my second MWMC meeting. The first one was very eye-opening for me. I went there, I had an hour and a half planned on my schedule, and it went a little bit over, but that was fine, because it gave me an opportunity to see how dedicated your board is. You know, I'm the newest member, and the people who are on that board had incisive questions that I didn't even know the questions, let alone the answers. So it was it was intriguing to me to be there, and I thank you for the Mr. Breedenthal. Thank you for the Breedenstein, excuse me. We had a discussion about the pronunciation of your name in our meeting. Thank you. In our meeting this morning. Is it Frankenstein? But thanks for the in-depth orientation that you gave me. I received my first orientation back in 1995, and it was Peter, who's on the board now, Peter Ruffier, who's on the board. Ruffier. Thank you. Who's on the board now, gave me the presentation back then. And while things have changed as far as the technology is concerned, he answered that question that I mentioned earlier back then. Is the water downstream from the discharge safe? Yes, it is. And it goes without saying that the monumental load that's undertaken by the professionals who work in the agency, it's just remarkable that we're able to make certain that people catching fish downstream can eat the fish that are caught downstream. So I want to congratulate you on that. And also just mention that you get requests all the time, and I know that you've received a request from Square One Villages for assistance with the SDC charges, and I understand that you'll be talking about that at some point. But Commissioner Lyken, followed by Commissioner Bozovich's questions regarding SDCs and the increase in activity. I was listening carefully to the answers, and just very briefly, I could go on for a long time with a lot of questions that I have, but I think I'm going to have greater opportunity to ask those questions where I'm not wasting so many people's time receiving answers to questions that probably everybody knows the answers to already. But I want to thank you for the work. Thank you for taking me in as a new recruit, so to speak, and I'm looking forward to working with you. And I have a question for you. You're temporary. Can you explain that a little bit? Your position is
temporary. Okay. Well, yes. We had some staff changes about a year ago, and I had been plant manager for quite a number of years, and the position of division director, which I'm currently in, a permanent replacement has not been, that process has not begun yet. So that's why I'm temporary.
Interim, I guess, is the actual.
Or interim, yes.
The actual word, yeah. Well, I'm looking forward to working with you because you provided me with information 3 weeks ago now that once again I didn't even know the questions, let alone the answers that you were given to me. I'm looking forward to spending time with you and really understanding how you work with how many millions of gallons do you work with a year? It's
about 11 to 13 billion.
Not but
billion.
Billion
yes.
gallons a year, per year. That just blows me away. Well, thank you very much. Any further questions or comments? And we do have an order before us. It's 17-05-09-05. Do I have a motion? Commissioner Bozovich.
So I'll move approval of Order 1705-0905 in the matter of ratifying the fiscal year 2017-18 Regional Wastewater Program Budget and Capital Improvements Program.
Second.
Moved by Commissioner Bozovich and seconded by Commissioner Lyken. Discussion to the motion. I see no discussion. I'll call for the vote. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Passes unanimously. Good job. So now all three agencies have passed it, and we're on our way. Is that correct?
Yep. Well, hopefully final adoption will be in June. I appreciate your time. It's always a pleasure to come speak to you. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you very much. You know, it's amazing what happens over there. You know, you drive by it on Belline Road, and you really hardly notice what's going on, but billions.
Yeah, and you know, just as a side note, I grew up outside of D.C. I remember when the Potomac River was posted no swimming as it went past the tidal basin and all those beautiful monuments because it was a typhoid risk.
Typhoid risk.
You know,
And I remember Salem. we used to blame the Boise Cascade discharge plant for polluting the Willamette River, but really it was a consolidated effort of everybody upstream. That,
And it's swimmable now in Washington, D.C., the Potomac River is. It's an amazing change since the Clean Water Act.
and there are fish in there, and yeah, there's a viable ecosystem. Excellent. Moving along then, we've already concluded Commissioner's business.
Can I jump back to announcements?
Announcements, yes, please.
Yeah, so we kind of ran into the 10 o'clock, and I have one last thing I wanted to note, that my radio show that's normally at 4 o'clock on Wednesdays is going to be at 6 because of the budget meeting, and my guest this week will be Sheriff Byron Trapp, and we'll be talking about the jail levy and anything else people want to call in about, especially seeing we'll have just released the county's budget. So I'm sure there'll be lots of questions. So that's 6 p.m. on Wednesday, the Bo's Nose Show with Sheriff Byron Trapp.
I was going to say, I've forgotten the name of the show. Could you say that one more time?
Yeah. And you can just look me up on Facebook to find a link.
And really, it's entertaining. If you have a chance to listen to it, it really is fun because the guests that Commissioner Bozievich has are really very topical. And right now, having the sheriff on there is a very good time to hear from the sheriff. So, further announcements from Commissioners.
I just want to mention that I've tried to listen to it, but it's a no-show every week.
A nose show.
It's a no-show.
And with that, any further announcements? Okay, then agenda team requests. Do we have any agenda team or work session requests? Commissioner Lycan.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So this may be a moot point now, but last week, late last week, we received from Rocky McVeigh, Executive Director of the Association of ONC Counties, asking if the counties would write a letter to the Interior Department. But I believe it has now been officially stated that the Interior Department is going to include the Cascade-Siskiyous monument. And again, this is the expansion of the monument, not the monument. In fact, the ONC Association has stated on record, we want to keep the monument. It's the expansion that's the challenging piece, because the expansion actually has just that expansion. That's 90% of that expansion is ONC lands. And with them, out of that 90% of that 90% is actually marketable ONC lands. And based on the ONC Act, past solicitor opinion, that probably shouldn't have been something that should have happened. In fact, it's likely going to be illegal. And right now there are, I believe, already 3 court cases that have been put forth, including one by the Association of ONC Counties. And so I'm going to look at my colleagues. I'm not sure we need to send a letter now because it's already been officially, it is now officially on the Interior has now included that. So I guess maybe some thoughts here.
Thank you. And Commissioner Bozievich brought that up during agenda setting this morning, so I'm glad you brought it back up. Commissioner Bozievich.
Yeah, I was just going to say that we looked at it and decided that it was kind of a moot point.
Yeah.
Last week when you sent us the request,
right.
It made sense, but since then it's been announced that that's included in
That's
the review.
included. Yeah, and again, I think we want to make clear the association has no issue at all with the monument itself. It's the expansion that we're pleased that is now going to be under review because of the fact that almost all of that expansion is ONC lands, and that's unfortunate, but it is what it is. So, okay, very good. I'm good with that. Thanks.
Thank you, Commissioner Lycan. Any further agenda team requests? I see none. Then we'll move along to assignments. Review of assignments. Mr. Rickoff.
Chair, Fire Commissioners, I did not recall any assignment. I do want to note that Commissioner Bozievich mentioned SB 327 earlier, the recreational immunity. That is set for a hearing and work session today at 1 p.m. So that is being tracked by county staff. We're paying attention to that. Other than that, there's the Budget Committee meeting and public hearing this evening at 5:30 in this very room. And the County Administrator, Steve Mokryski, will be back at that time.
Thank you, Mr. Rakoff. We're just going to stay here until the Budget Committee starts.
Sounds like a great idea.
Moving along, we have no need for executive session today. Any other business? I see no other business. We will be back as the Budget Committee at 5:30 this evening. We are adjourned.